The scissors in Chloe's hand were not tailor's shears. They were cheap, brutal things from a kitchen drawer, their plastic handles a garish shade of red. They glinted under the cold, recessed lighting of their minimalist bedroom, a space designed more for a magazine spread than for human warmth. The suit hung before her, a ghost of a man she thought she knew. It was a simple, dark charcoal wool, impeccably tailored but unadorned by any ostentatious label. To her, it was an emblem of mediocrity, a declaration of her husband's persistent, infuriating failure to be more than he was. Liam stood in the doorway, motionless. He had just finished his shower, a towel slung around his waist, water droplets tracing paths through his dark hair. He watched his wife, her face a mask of cold fury and righteous purpose, as she made the first cut. The sound was obscene in the quiet room, a violent, tearing rasp as the metal blades bit into the fine fabric of the jacket's lapel. She didn't stop there. With methodical precision, she sliced through the chest, a long, jagged scar from shoulder to hem. Then she turned her attention to the trousers, severing one leg at the knee with a vicious snip. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply watched the destruction of his only suit, the one he had intended to wear to the Apex Gala, the most important technology event of the year. Chloe believed she was delivering a final, humiliating punishment. She thought she was grounding a man who dreamed too little, a man who was a dead weight on her social ambitions. She believed she was asserting her will over a quiet, unassuming consultant who was content with a life she found suffocatingly average. Chloe had no idea she was not punishing a failure. She had no idea she was not married to an ordinary man. In her arrogant blindness, she could not see the truth that was hidden in plain sight. In that moment, with the shredded remains of a $2,000 suit at her feet, Chloe thought she was ending an argument. She didn't know she was declaring war on a king. She had no idea that her quiet, gentle husband, Liam, was the silent, pseudonymous founder of Nexus AI, the very company being celebrated at the gala, an empire valued at $88 billion. And within 12 hours, her entire world, built on a foundation of condescension and illusion, would be brought to its knees. We love telling stories about the moments that change everything. If you love them too, and I hope you do, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more tales of justice and revelation. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Now let's see how this all began. The catalyst, as is so often the case, was a piece of paper. It arrived 3 weeks before the gala, delivered not by a common mail carrier, but by a private courier. The envelope was thick, creamy cardstock, the color of old ivory. Embossed in minimalist silver lettering on the back was a single, stylized N. Chloe had plucked it from the courier's hand with an air of entitlement, as if such deliveries were a daily occurrence, though they were not. She slid it open with a long, painted fingernail, her eyes scanning the contents with a growing sense of excitement. "It's here," she announced, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous, sparsely furnished living room. The house was her design, a monument to a cold, architectural aesthetic she'd seen in a magazine. It was all white walls, polished concrete floors, and vast panes of glass that looked out onto a meticulously manicured, yet lifeless garden. Liam was sitting in one of the two brutally uncomfortable designer armchairs, reading a book on quantum computing. He looked up, his expression placid. "What's here, Chloe?" he asked. "The invitation, the Apex Gala, celebrating a decade of innovation with Nexus AI," she read, her voice dripping with reverence for the name. "Everyone who is anyone will be there." She looked at Liam, and her excitement curdled into something else, a familiar, weary condescension. "Marcus managed to get us tickets. It was practically impossible. He had to pull every string he has." Marcus was Chloe's father, a man who ran a mid-level investment firm that perpetually chased the shadow of the corporate giants. He saw the world as a rigid hierarchy, and he and his daughter were obsessed with climbing it. In their eyes, Liam was not an asset in this climb. He was an anchor. Liam closed his book, marking his page carefully. "That was good of him," he said, his tone even. He knew, of course, that Marcus hadn't gotten the tickets. He had. 2 invitations, designated for the founder, had been sent to a private address he maintained. He had simply had one of them rerouted to the house, knowing Chloe would assume it came from her father. It was a small, necessary deception in a life that had become full of them. He had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that they could attend together, that for one night she might see him in a different light. "Good of him?" Chloe scoffed, tossing the invitation onto the glass coffee table between them. "It was necessary. This is a huge opportunity for him, for us. The people at this event, Liam, they don't just run companies, they run the world. And the guest of honor, the founder of Nexus AI, they say he's a complete recluse. No one even knows his real name. They just call him L. Can you imagine the power that man has?" Liam felt a familiar, dull ache. The irony was a constant companion, a silent observer in his own home. He was L. He was the architect of the very power she worshipped, yet in her eyes, he was invisible. He worked from a small home office, took calls as a freelance AI consultant, and earned what she considered a pitifully modest income, an income he intentionally kept low, depositing the vast majority of his earnings into a complex web of trusts and holding companies. It was a life of deliberate duality, a self-imposed exile from the wealth he had created, all in an attempt to build a life on something real, something that wasn't transactional. He had wanted to be loved for who he was, not what he had. After 5 years of marriage to Chloe, he was beginning to understand the depth of his miscalculation. "It will be an interesting evening," Liam said, his voice a calm pool in the turbulent waters of her ambition. Chloe looked at him, her gaze sweeping over his simple sweater and jeans. Her perfectly sculpted lips tightened. "It will be a disaster if you go looking like that," she said, her tone sharp as broken glass. "You can't wear that thing you call a suit. We are going to be surrounded by billionaires, by visionaries. You need to look the part. You need to look like you belong with me." The implication was clear. As he did not belong. He was a liability, a stain on the perfect picture she wanted to present to the world. He felt the old sting of it, but years of her casual cruelty had taught him to absorb it, to let it pass through him. He had always believed that one day, when the time was right, he would reveal himself, and all of this would fall away. They would laugh about it. He was a patient man, a builder of complex systems. He believed that even a broken relationship could be debugged, that the faulty code of misunderstanding could be rewritten. "I have a suit," he said quietly. "No, Liam," she corrected, her voice dangerously soft. "You have a uniform for the anonymous. This is not a funeral for some distant relative. This is the Apex Gala. You will get a new suit, a real suit, and I will approve it before you even think about paying for it." He looked at the invitation lying on the table. The silver end seemed to mock him. It stood for Nexus. It stood for his life's work. But in this house, it stood only for a social ladder he had no interest in climbing, but was being forced to ascend by the woman who slept beside him every night. He nodded slowly. "All right, Chloe, I'll get a new suit." He would play her game, for now. He was a strategist after all, and every good strategy requires patience. He would get a suit, but he would get it on his own terms. This small act of defiance was a quiet promise to himself. The foundation of her world was already cracked. She just hadn't felt the tremors yet. The following Saturday, Liam drove into the city. He bypassed the glittering, ostentatious storefronts of the designer brands Chloe revered, the ones with names she would drop into conversation like polished stones. Instead, he navigated to a quiet, tree-lined street in an older part of town, a place where craftsmanship was valued over branding. He parked his modest sedan, a car that was a constant source of embarrassment for Chloe, and entered a shop with a simple, elegant sign that read, Arturo's Fine Tailoring. The air inside smelled of wool, cedar, and hot metal from the press. An elderly man with a kind, wrinkled face and a measuring tape draped around his neck like a stole looked up from his work. This was Arturo, a master tailor whose family had been dressing men for 3 generations. He didn't dress celebrities or titans of industry, not overtly anyway. He dressed men who understood that true style wasn't shouted, but spoken in the quiet language of fit, fabric, and form. "Liam, my boy," Arturo said, his voice warm and accented. "It is good to see you. It has been too long. Another project keeping you busy?" Liam smiled, a genuine smile that rarely made an appearance at home. "Something like that, Arturo. I need a suit. For a formal event." Arturo's eyes twinkled. "Ah, so the hermit is leaving his cave. This must be a special occasion." He gestured for Liam to stand on the low platform in front of a triptych of mirrors. "Let us see. What is the occasion telling us? Power? Celebration? Romance?" "Something of a reckoning," Liam said, the word tasting strange on his tongue. The tailor's bushy eyebrows rose a fraction. "A reckoning, I see. Then we need something that does not plead, something that does not boast. We need something that simply is, the truth in fabric." For the next hour they worked. Arturo, with his decades of experience, moved around Liam with an expert's economy of motion. They selected a Super 150S wool from a small mill in Italy, a charcoal so dark it was almost black, with a subtle depth that seemed to absorb the light. The design was classic, 2-button, with a slim but not constricting cut. There were no flashy details, no contrast stitching, no ostentatious peak lapels. Its quality was in its quiet perfection. "Your wife? She will like this?" Arturo asked as he took the final measurements, his professional curiosity tinged with personal concern. He had met Chloe once, years ago, and had formed his own silent opinion. Liam's smile faded slightly. "My wife has specific tastes, Arturo." "Ah," the tailor said, a world of understanding in the single syllable. "Some people, they look at a man in a suit and they see the price tag. Others, they see the man. This suit," he patted the bolt of fabric, "is for those who see the man." 2 weeks later, the suit was ready. Liam picked it up, enclosed in a simple black garment bag. When he brought it home, Chloe was in the living room, scrolling through a tablet, her face illuminated by the screen's cold light. "Is that it?" she asked, not looking up. "Yes." "Let me see." He unzipped the bag and held the jacket up for her inspection. He felt a flicker of hope, a naive wish that she might see the quality, the craftsmanship, that she might for a moment see him. She finally put down her tablet and walked over, circling the suit as if it were a piece of livestock at auction. She pinched the fabric between her fingers, her nose wrinkled in disdain. "What is this? Where is the label?" "It's from a tailor, Chloe. It's bespoke." "A tailor?" She said the word as if it were synonymous with peasant. "You mean it's a no-name brand?" "Liam, I told you. This is the Apex Gala, not a community theater production. Did you even look at the places I sent you? Armani, Tom Ford, Zegna?" "I wanted something that was well made," he said, his voice strained. He was trying to hold on to his patience, but it was wearing thin, eroded by 1,000 such moments of casual dismissal. "You wanted to embarrass me," she retorted, her voice rising. "This looks like something my father's accountant would wear. It's respectable. It's boring. It's you, in suit form." She stepped back, her arms crossed, her judgment delivered. "I refuse to be seen with you in that. You have 1 week, Liam. 1 week to fix this, or you are not coming. I will go with my father, and I will tell everyone you were too ill to attend." The ultimatum hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. He looked from her furious face to the beautiful, understated suit in his hands. It represented his world, his values, quiet competence, hidden strength, an appreciation for substance over surface. And she had just declared it worthless. In his pocket, his fingers found a familiar object, a thin, featureless black keycard. It was his master key to the Nexus AI headquarters, a building he could see from their bedroom window on a clear day. He gripped it tightly, the cool, smooth plastic a small anchor in the storm of his wife's disdain. He had built an empire on logic, on systems where input led to a predictable output. His marriage, however, was a chaotic algorithm he could no longer comprehend. "I will be at the gala, Chloe," he said, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "And I will be wearing this suit." He turned and walked away, carrying the suit back to their bedroom. He could feel her eyes on his back, burning with a rage that was born not of hatred, but of disappointment. She wasn't angry that he was a bad man. She was angry that he wasn't an important one. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that she would not let this go. The final confrontation was no longer a possibility, it was an inevitability. The reckoning he had spoken of to Arturo was coming, but it was not the one he had planned. The week leading up to the gala was a study in frigid silence. Chloe treated Liam not as a husband, but as a disappointing piece of furniture. She spoke around him, through him, but never to him. Her communication came in the form of heavy sighs when he entered a room, or the pointed way she would take calls from her father, discussing the gala in loud, excited tones, always mentioning the importance of making the right impression. Liam, for his part, retreated into his work. He spent long hours in his home office, the door closed. Chloe assumed he was tinkering with whatever insignificant projects his consulting work entailed. She had no idea he was coordinating the final, intricate details of the very event she was so desperate to attend. A multi-million-dollar production involving global logistics, cutting-edge tech demonstrations, and security for some of the wealthiest people on the planet. He would sit at his triple monitor setup, one screen showing the gala's master schedule, another displaying real-time security feeds from the venue, and the third running complex diagnostic code for the new AI core he was set to unveil. Then he would hear Chloe's car pull into the driveway, and with a few keystrokes, his entire world would vanish, replaced by the mundane facade of a simple spreadsheet and an email client. The duality of his existence was exhausting. He felt like a man living in two different time zones at once. One evening, he overheard a conversation between Chloe and her father Marcus through the half-open door of the living room. Chloe had put her phone on speaker, a common habit when she wanted to ensure Liam was within earshot of her complaints. "I just don't know what to do with him, Daddy." Chloe's voice was laced with theatrical despair. "The gala is in 2 days, and he's still insisting on wearing that dreadful drab suit. It's like he's actively trying to sabotage me." Marcus's voice, smooth and patronizing, came through the speaker. Now, sweetheart. We knew what he was when you married him. He's a simple man, stable, predictable. These are virtues of a sort. They just aren't the sort that are useful in our world." "But this is Nexus A1, Chloe wailed. "The people there, they can make or break your entire career with a single conversation. And I'll be standing next to him, looking like I picked him up from the lost and found." "Let me talk to him," Marcus said soothingly. "I'll make him see reason. Men like Liam, they understand practicality. I'll explain the financial implications of a poor social showing. He'll understand that." Liam quietly closed his office door, the lock clicking softly into place. Financial implications. The irony was so immense it was almost comical. Marcus's firm, Sterling Investments, had been struggling for the past 18 months. A series of bad bets on the market had left it dangerously overleveraged. What Marcus didn't know was that 6 months ago, a silent, anonymous investor had acquired a controlling interest in his company's debt through a subsidiary holding company. That investor was Liam. He had done it to protect Chloe's father from his own hubris, to stabilize the ship without anyone knowing he was at the helm. He had saved Marcus from ruin, and the man was about to lecture him on financial practicality. The following evening, Marcus came for dinner. It was an ambush, cloaked in the guise of a family meal. They sat at the long, sterile dining table, a piece of polished oak that could comfortably seat 12, but rarely held more than the three of them. Chloe served a meal she'd had catered, presenting it as her own. "Liam," Marcus began, after the initial pleasantries were out of the way. He dabbed his lips with a linen napkin, a gesture of a man preparing to deliver a sermon. "Chloe tells me there's some disagreement about your attire for the gala." Liam placed his fork down. "Chloe has her preferences," he said non-committally. "It's more than preference, son," Marcus said, leaning forward. He adopted the tone he used with junior analysts who had made a costly error. "It's about signaling. In our world, what you wear signals your status, your success, your relevance. This gala is not just a party, it's a battlefield. You go in wearing the wrong armor, you lose before you even start." "And my suit is the wrong armor?" Liam asked, his gaze steady. "It's no armor at all," Chloe interjected, her control finally snapping. "It's a white flag of surrender." Marcus held up a hand to silence his daughter. "Let me put this in terms you'll understand, Liam. I'm on the verge of landing a major new client, a venture capital fund that will be at this gala. If I can get them to sign, it would mean millions for my firm. But they need to see that I associate with success. When I introduce you as my son-in-law, what are they going to see? A man in a cheap, off-the-rack suit? It undermines my credibility. It undermines Chloe's position. It could, and I'm not being dramatic here, cost me this deal." Liam felt a profound sense of detachment, as if he were watching a play. The man whose company he secretly owned was explaining that his choice of clothing might cost him a deal that wouldn't even exist without the financial backstop Liam had covertly provided. The sheer, layered absurdity of it was breathtaking. "So you're saying," Liam said slowly, choosing his words with surgical care, "that your success depends on the perception of my success?" "Exactly," Marcus said, relieved. "You understand. And you've determined that my suit, which you haven't seen, is not indicative of success?" Chloe described it. "It's a no-name brand, Liam. It's invisible. You need to be visible. You need to wear the uniform of the club you want to join." Liam picked up his wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid. He thought of the Nexus AI headquarters, the building known to its employees as the Core. It had no sign, no logo on the outside. It was an anonymous block of smoked glass in burnished steel. Its power was not in its branding, but in its function. Like his suit. Like him. "I appreciate your concern, Marcus," Liam said, his voice level. "Both of you. But my decision is made. I will be wearing the suit I purchased." He took a sip of wine, his eyes meeting Marcus's over the rim of the glass. "I'm sure your deal will be fine. Sometimes the foundations of things are stronger than they appear." The remark, intended as a small private reassurance, was completely lost on them. Marcus saw only stubbornness. Chloe saw only defiance. The rest of the dinner passed in a thick, resentful silence. When Marcus left, he gave Liam a look of profound disappointment. Chloe didn't even look at him at all. She simply cleared the plates and disappeared into the kitchen, the sounds of her angry cleaning echoing through the silent house. Liam went back to his office. He sat in the dark for a long time, looking at the city lights twinkling in the distance. The game had gone on long enough. He had wanted to reveal his world to Chloe in a moment of joy and triumph, but she had made that impossible. She had forced his hand. The reckoning was coming. But now it would not be a celebration. It would be a judgment. He logged into a secure system and typed a short, encrypted message to his head of security, a former Mossad agent named Gabriel. "Potential issue at the gala. Personal. Stand by." The reply came back in seconds. Standing by, Elle. We are always prepared. Prepared, Liam thought. So am I. He had one day left. One day until the world he had built and the world he lived in collided. And he knew, with a sadness that settled deep in his bones, that the collision would leave nothing standing. The day of the gala arrived, wrapped in a tense, gray sky that threatened rain. The silence in the house was no longer cold. It was electric. It was the heavy, charged stillness that precedes a lightning strike. Chloe had been in her glam room, a white-on-white space she had converted from a spare bedroom, since noon, attended to by a team of hair and makeup artists. The sounds of their cheerful chatter and the hum of a hairdryer felt like an intrusion from another, brighter world. Liam spent the afternoon in his office, methodically going through his final checklist for the event. He confirmed the keynote speakers, reviewed the security protocols with Gabrielle one last time, and ran a final simulation of the live demonstration of Oracle, the new predictive AI core. It was the most ambitious project Nexus had ever undertaken, an AI capable of forecasting market trends, geopolitical shifts, and even social movements with staggering accuracy. Tonight he would show the world a glimpse of its power. The thought brought him no joy, only a sense of grim duty. The work was pure, a clean and elegant system of logic. His life, by contrast, was a chaotic mess. Around 6 o'clock, he shut down his systems, the monitors going dark one by one. It was time. He showered and walked into the master bedroom. His suit was hanging where he had left it, in a breathable garment bag at the back of his closet. Chloe was standing before a full-length mirror, a vision in a glittering silver couture gown that clung to her like a second skin. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. She looked magnificent and utterly alien. She saw his reflection in the mirror. Her eyes, expertly shadowed and lined, narrowed. "Don't even think about it, Liam." "I'm getting ready, Chloe," he said calmly, walking toward the closet. "Ready for what? To humiliate me? I told you, you are not wearing that suit." Her voice was low and dangerous. He stopped and turned to face her. For the first time in a long time, he let some of the weariness show in his eyes. "We've been married for 5 years. Have I ever, once, deliberately tried to humiliate you?" "You're doing it right now," she shot back, whirling to face him. "By refusing to be better. By being content with this smallness. Do you have any idea what this night means to me? It's a chance to finally be in the right room with the right people. And you want to walk in there looking like you're applying for a job as a waiter. My worth and yours is not determined by the label on my suit," he said, the words feeling tired and worn from overuse in his own mind. "Oh, spare me the Hallmark card philosophy," she sneered. "This is the real world, Liam, a world you seem to have no interest in joining. I have worked too hard to build a life for us, to cultivate the right connections, to be dragged down by your stubborn mediocrity." He looked at her, truly looked at her. The woman he had fallen in love with, or the idea of her he had fallen in love with, was gone. In her place was this stranger, a beautiful, brittle creature made of ambition and insecurity. The sadness he had felt the night before crystallized into something harder, colder. It was clarity. "I'm going to the gala, Chloe," he said, his voice final. He turned his back on her and pulled the garment bag from the closet. And that's when she moved. He heard the whisper of silk and the sharp click of a drawer opening. When he turned back, she was holding the kitchen scissors, the ones with the garish red handle. Her eyes were blazing with a wild, desperate fire. "I warned you," she breathed, her voice trembling with rage. He stood perfectly still, the garment bag in his hand. He watched as she stalked toward it, her beautiful, expensive face twisted into a mask of fury. He could have stopped her. He was stronger than she was. He could have grabbed her wrist, taken the scissors, but he didn't. In a strange, detached way, he was curious. He wanted to see how far she would go. He wanted to see the final, undeniable truth of their relationship laid bare. He held the bag steady. She didn't hesitate. With a guttural cry of frustration, she plunged the scissors into the bag. The initial sound was a muffled puncture, followed by that hideous, rasping tear as she sliced downwards. She pulled the jacket out, the charcoal wool now defaced with a long, gaping wound. It hung from her hand like a dead thing. Not satisfied, she let it drop and grabbed the trousers, driving the blades into the fabric again and again, hacking at them with a frantic, savage energy. Silence descended. The only sound was Chloe's ragged breathing. The shredded pieces of the suit lay on the pristine white carpet like a dark stain. She looked from the ruined fabric to Liam's face, expecting an explosion. She wanted a fight, a screaming match, something to validate the enormity of her rage. She got nothing. Liam's face was a mask of absolute calm. There was no anger, no shock, no pain. There was only a profound, chilling stillness. It was the stillness of a deep lake just before the ice cracks. He looked down at the remains of his beautiful, bespoke suit, the suit that was meant for a reckoning. He looked at the scissors still clutched in her hand. Then his eyes lifted and met hers. And for the first time, Chloe saw something in his gaze that she had never seen before. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't acquiescence. It was a cold, hard, dispassionate judgment. It was the look of a man who had just run the final line of code on a failed program and was preparing to delete it. "Thank you, Chloe," he said, his voice soft and even. "You've made things much clearer now." He turned, walked back to the bathroom, and closed the door without another word, the click of the latch as final as a gavel strike. Chloe stood alone in the magnificent room, surrounded by the trappings of a life she'd fought for, the weapons still in her hand, suddenly feeling a tremor of fear she could not name. She had won the battle over the suit, but a terrifying new feeling began to dawn on her. She had just lost everything else. Behind the locked bathroom door, Liam did not rage. He did not despair. He leaned against the cool marble of the vanity, his hands gripping the edge, and took a single, deep, steadying breath. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back was calm, the eyes clear. The man who had hoped to fix his marriage was gone. In his place was Elle, the founder of Nexus AI, a man who did not deal in sentiment, but in consequences. He took out his phone. It was a simple, unassuming device on the outside, but its internal hardware was a custom-built fortress of encryption. He sent a single, two-word text message to a number that did not exist in any public registry. The recipient was Evelyn Reed, his chief operating officer, and the only other person on Earth who knew his full story. The message read, "Contingency Alpha." The reply was instantaneous. "Understood. ETA 15 minutes. The package is with me." Contingency Alpha. They had developed it years ago, a protocol for a situation where his identity was compromised or he needed to make a sudden, public appearance without warning. It was a detailed plan for a complete, instantaneous transformation from Liam, the consultant, to Elle, the founder. He had never imagined he would use it because of this. He stepped into the large, glass-walled shower and turned the water on, not hot, but cool. He let it run over him, washing away not just the tension of the day, but the last 5 years of his life. He was washing away the pretense, the hope, the self-imposed diminishment. He was washing away the man Chloe thought she knew, and in doing so, revealing the man he had always been. When he emerged, wrapped in a fresh towel, he could hear Chloe on the phone in the bedroom, her voice high and strained. "I don't know what he's doing, Daddy. He just locked himself in the bathroom. Yes, I did it. I had to. He wouldn't listen." Liam ignored her. He bypassed the bedroom, walking through the connected master closet and out another door into the main hallway. He was dressed in a simple pair of black trousers and a t-shirt he kept in the gym locker. He walked downstairs, his footsteps silent on the polished concrete. Chloe, still on the phone, didn't hear him. He stood before the vast, floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, looking out at the rain that had finally begun to fall, streaking the glass like tears. He saw a pair of headlights cut through the gloom, a sleek, black, completely unadorned sedan gliding to a silent halt at the end of his driveway. It was an electric vehicle of a make that wasn't yet available to the public, a prototype from a car company Nexus AI had secretly acquired. He opened the front door and stepped out into the damp evening air. He didn't bother with a coat. The cool rain felt cleansing. As he walked down the driveway, the back door of the sedan opened. A woman stepped out, holding a large, military-grade protective case. Evelyn Reed was a woman who radiated a quiet, formidable competence. In her early 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back in a severe bun, she was the operational genius who turned Liam's visions into reality. She ran the day-to-day operations of an $88 billion empire with the calm precision of a chess grandmaster. "Elle," she said, her voice calm but with an undercurrent of concern. She didn't call him Liam. No one in his professional life did. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is exactly as it needs to be, Evelyn," he replied, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. She nodded, understanding that the question was not about his emotional state, but about the plan. Contingency Alpha is fully enacted. Security is heightened. Your personal detail is in place. The board has been notified of your intent to appear, and, she patted the case she was holding, the package is secure. He took the case from her. It was heavy. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'll see you at the venue." "We'll be waiting," she said. She got back in the car, and it pulled away as silently as it had arrived, its taillights disappearing into the rain. Liam walked back inside, carrying the case. He went not to the master bedroom, but to a guest suite at the opposite end of the house. He placed the case on the bed and opened it. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was another suit. This was not Arturo's suit. This was something else entirely. The fabric was a unique blend of silk and a proprietary nanomaterial developed in a Nexus lab, giving it an impossible depth of color, a black that seemed to drink the light. The cut was architectural, severe, and utterly perfect. It was a suit that didn't just suggest power, it was the physical manifestation of it. It was the armor Marcus had spoken of, but it was armor for a general, not a foot soldier. Beside it lay a shirt of impossibly fine Sea Island cotton, a pair of handmade Italian leather shoes, and a watch. The watch had no brand name on its face, just a simple, elegant design. It was one of 12 in existence, a custom piece he had commissioned for the founding members of his executive team. Its internal mechanics were a marvel of microengineering, linked directly to the Nexus network. It was, in effect, a command center on his wrist. He dressed slowly, methodically. The clothes felt different. They felt like his own skin. As he fastened the watch, its face lit up for a moment, displaying a welcome message. "Welcome, L. System nominal." When he was done, he looked at himself in the mirror. The man looking back was a stranger to this house. The quiet consultant was gone. The accommodating husband was a ghost. This was the man who had built an empire from a single line of code in his dorm room. The man who negotiated with governments and outmaneuvered the most ruthless CEOs in the world. This was L. He heard a car pull up outside. Not a silent electric sedan, but a large black SUV. His security detail. He walked out of the guest room and down the stairs. Chloe was standing at the bottom, her phone clutched in her hand. She had finished her call with her father. Her face was pale, her makeup slightly smudged from crying. She looked up and saw him. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes widened, taking in the suit, the watch, the sheer transformative power of his presence. He looked like a man from a different world, a world of unimaginable wealth and authority. "Liam?" she whispered, the name sounding uncertain, foreign. "What is this? Where did you get that suit?" "I have to go, Chloe," he said, his voice cold and distant. He walked past her toward the front door. "Wait!" she cried, a note of panic in her voice. "How are you getting there? "Who is that outside?" She ran to the window and peered out at the black SUV, at the two large men in dark suits who were now standing by the door. "Liam, what is going on?" He paused at the door, his hand on the handle. He turned to look at her one last time. Her confusion, her dawning fear, it brought him no satisfaction, only a deep, hollow emptiness. "You were right about one thing," he said, his voice flat. "The suit is important. You just didn't understand which one." He opened the door and walked out into the rain, not looking back. One of the security men opened the rear door of the SUV for him. He got in without a word. The door closed with a solid, definitive thud, sealing him in and sealing her out. As the SUV pulled away from the curb, Chloe stood in the open doorway, the light from the house spilling out around her, a solitary, glittering figure about to be plunged into darkness. She had wanted a husband who was important. She was about to find out just how important he was. The Apex Gala was being held at the city's brand new modern art museum, a soaring structure of glass and steel that Liam's philanthropic foundation had largely funded. The entrance was a chaotic but controlled spectacle of flashing cameras, television reporters, and a river of black cars depositing the global elite onto a rain-slicked red carpet. Chloe and her father Marcus arrived in Marcus's aging but still respectable Mercedes. The mood in the car was thick with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Chloe had hastily repaired her makeup and tried to regain her composure, but a nervous energy buzzed just beneath her polished surface. Liam's bizarre, silent departure had deeply unsettled her. "I still don't understand it," she said for the 10th time, twisting a diamond bracelet on her wrist. "The suit, the car, it makes no sense." "He probably rented it," Marcus said dismissively, though he didn't sound convinced. "A desperate, pathetic attempt to save face after you put him in his place. Don't let it distract you, sweetheart. Tonight is about us. Focus, network, be brilliant." They stepped out onto the red carpet and Chloe immediately adopted her public persona. Her smile was bright, her posture perfect. She was in her element, or so she thought. They moved through the crush of people, exchanging air kisses and hollow greetings with acquaintances. Marcus pointed out titans of industry with a hushed reverence. "That's Julian Croft, runs the biggest hedge fund in Europe. And there, see, the woman in red, that's Senator Blackwood." Chloe absorbed it all, her eyes gleaming. This was where she belonged. This was the world she had been trying to drag Liam into. She felt a flash of irritation at him. How could he not want this? She found a small group of her socialite friends, women whose lives were a whirlwind of charity events and luxury travel. "Chloe, you look divine," one of them, a woman named Isabel, gushed. "But where's your other half? I thought Liam was coming." Chloe forced a laugh. "Oh, you know Liam. He had a last-minute work emergency. So dull. And besides," she leaned in conspiratorially, lowering her voice, "we had the most dreadful fight. You will not believe what he tried to wear tonight. A suit so boring it could have been used as a sedative. I had to dispose of it." The women giggled, appreciating the delicious bit of domestic drama. To them, it was just a funny story, another tale of a long-suffering, glamorous wife and her hopelessly average husband. Chloe felt a surge of validation. She was right. He was the problem. Her actions were justified. They were standing near the main entrance, sipping champagne, when the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The roar of the crowd outside changed, growing louder, more frantic. The flashes from the paparazzi cameras intensified into a blinding, continuous strobe. Inside, a ripple of curiosity spread through the hall. Conversations paused. Heads turned toward the entrance. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, craning his neck. "Must be someone big." The museum's main doors, usually revolving, were pushed open by a team of security guards in sharp, dark suits, creating a wide, clear path. A hush fell over the immediate area. Through the doors walked a phalanx of more security, forming a protective perimeter. And in the center of them, walking with an unhurried, commanding grace, was a man. It was Liam. But it was not Liam. It was the man from the driveway, the man in the suit of midnight black. He moved with an aura of absolute authority, his gaze sweeping over the room with a cool, analytical detachment. He was flanked by Evelyn Reed, who held a tablet and spoke to him in low, confidential tones, and two other stern-faced executives. He didn't look like a guest. He looked like he owned the building, which in a way, he did. Chloe's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her mind struggled to process the scene. The man walking through the parted crowd, the man who was causing titans of industry to fall silent and stare, was the same man whose suit she had cut to pieces just over an hour ago. It was impossible. It was absurd. "Is that?" Marcus stammered, his face slack with disbelief. "That looks like Liam." "No, it can't be," Chloe whispered, her throat tight. "It's just someone who looks like him. A coincidence." But then Julian Croft, the hedge fund billionaire Marcus had pointed out earlier, stepped forward and intercepted Liam's path. He didn't try to shake his hand. He just nodded respectfully. "L," Croft said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet, "good to finally see you in person. We need to talk about the Singapore expansion." Liam paused. He gave Croft a brief, almost imperceptible nod. "Schedule it with Evelyn," he said, his voice calm and clear, yet carrying an unmistakable weight of command. He didn't break his stride. Croft, one of the most powerful men in Europe, simply stepped back, looking pleased to have gotten even that much. The blood drained from Chloe's face. L. They had called him L, the reclusive visionary founder of Nexus AI, the man this entire gala was celebrating. Her friends were staring, their mouths agape. "Chloe," Isabel whispered, her eyes wide. Is that your Liam?" Chloe couldn't answer. Her mind was a maelstrom of confusion, denial, and a terrifying, dawning horror. She watched as her husband, her quiet, simple, mediocre husband, walked through the most exclusive gathering in the world, not as a guest, but as its king. Every head turned. Every powerful person he passed either nodded in deference or watched with a look of awe and respect. He was the center of gravity in a room full of stars. He never once looked in her direction. It was as if she and her father didn't exist. They were just two more faces in the crowd, anonymous and insignificant. He and his entourage were led through the main hall toward a private, curtained-off VIP area at the far end. As he passed, Chloe caught his eye for a fraction of a second. There was no recognition in his gaze, no anger, nothing. It was the detached look a person might give a piece of furniture. The moment he disappeared behind the curtain, the spell was broken. The room erupted in a cacophony of hushed, frantic whispers. Everyone was asking the same question. Who was that? The answers spread through the crowd like wildfire. That was L, the founder of Nexus. That was him. Chloe felt the world tilt on its axis. Her legs felt weak. She reached out and grabbed her father's arm to steady herself. Marcus was staring at the spot where Liam had vanished, his face a ghastly shade of pale. "L?" he choked out. "Liam is L? It's not possible." Chloe's mind flashed back through 5 years of marriage. The closed office door, the consulting calls, the books on quantum physics and advanced mathematics, his quiet confidence, his complete lack of interest in the social climbing she valued, his strange, calm response to her fury, the destroyed suit, the new suit, the black car, the cold, final words at the door. It all clicked into place, a series of puzzle pieces forming a picture that was so vast, so staggeringly different from the one she had lived in, that she could barely comprehend it. Her husband wasn't a failure. He was, by the standards of her own world, the ultimate success. He was the prize she and her father had been so desperate to even get near tonight, and she had spent 5 years treating him like dirt. She had just shredded his suit with kitchen scissors like a petulant child. The laughter of her friends had died. They were staring at her now, not with amusement, but with a mixture of shock, awe, and something else, pity. She, Chloe, wife of the most powerful, mysterious man in technology, had just been telling stories about him as if he were a bumbling fool. The humiliation was so profound, so total, it was like a physical blow. She felt the blood rush to her face, a hot, burning shame. Her father grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly tight. "We have to talk to him," he hissed, his mind already shifting from shock to frantic, desperate calculation. "This changes everything, everything." But Chloe knew, with a certainty that was as cold and hard as the diamond on her finger, that it was too late. The man who had walked past her was not the man she had married. That man was gone, and she was the one who had destroyed him. A short while later, the formal part of the evening began. The CEO of the museum, a man Marcus had been trying to get a meeting with for months, took the stage. He spoke glowingly about the anonymous benefactor who had funded the museum's new technology wing and about the incredible innovations of Nexus AI. For a decade, the CEO said, his voice booming through the sound system, Nexus AI has changed our world from the shadows. Its founder, a true visionary known to the world only by a single initial, has prioritized the work over the fame, the progress over the profit. Tonight, for the first time, he has graciously agreed to step into the light. A spotlight cut through the dim hall, landing on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound and historic honor to introduce to you the mind behind Nexus AI, the architect of our digital future, L. From the wings of the stage, Liam emerged. He walked to the podium with the same unnerving calm he had shown all evening. The room, filled with the world's most jaded and powerful people, erupted in thunderous applause. They were on their feet, a standing ovation for a man most of them had never seen before. Chloe stood frozen, her hands clammy. Marcus was clapping mechanically, his face a mask of frantic, forced enthusiasm. Liam stood at the podium, waiting for the applause to die down. He looked out over the sea of faces, his expression unreadable. His eyes swept the room, passing over Chloe and her father without a flicker of recognition. "Thank you," he began, his voice amplified, filling every corner of the vast space. It was the same voice he used to ask if she wanted coffee in the morning, but now it held an undeniable resonance of power. 10 years ago, Nexus A1 began with a simple question. Can we build a system that not only answers our questions, but anticipates our needs? A system that doesn't just compute, but comprehends. He spoke for 10 minutes. He didn't use a teleprompter. His speech was a masterpiece of clarity and vision. He spoke of the future of artificial intelligence not as a tool for profit, but as a force for global change, for medicine, for education, for environmental sustainability. He was eloquent, inspiring, and utterly brilliant. Chloe listened, a growing sense of nausea twisting in her stomach. This was the man she had called mediocre. This was the mind she had deemed small. She had been living with a giant and had spent her time complaining that he didn't fit into the dollhouse she had built. As he concluded his speech, he announced the launch of the Oracle project, giving a brief, tantalizing glimpse into its capabilities. A murmur of pure shock and excitement rippled to the audience of hardened investors and tech gurus. He was not just ahead of the curve, he was drawing the curve. "The future is not something to be predicted," he finished, his voice resonating with quiet conviction. "It is something to be built. Let's build it together. Thank you." Another wave of applause, even more fervent than the first, washed over him. He gave a slight nod, a king acknowledging his court, and then walked off the stage, disappearing once more behind the curtain of the VIP area. The formal presentation was over. The real business of the night was about to begin. "Now," Marcus hissed, grabbing Chloe's elbow with a painful grip, "we go and talk to him. Now." He began to drag her through the crowd, pushing past people with a rudeness he would never have dared to show an hour ago. Chloe stumbled along behind him, her mind numb. What could they possibly say? What apology could cover the sin of such profound, willful ignorance? She felt like a character in a Greek tragedy, a fool who had mocked the gods and was now about to face their wrath. When they reached the entrance to the VIP section, they were stopped by two of the large, stone-faced security guards. "I'm sorry, sir, ma'am. This area is private," one of them said, his voice polite but utterly immovable. "He's my son-in-law," Marcus blustered, his voice high with desperation. "And this is his wife. Let us through." The guard didn't even blink. "I'm sorry, we have a strict list. Your names are not on it." "This is absurd," Marcus sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "Go and tell him. Tell Elle that his wife Chloe and her father Marcus are here to see him." The guard spoke quietly into his wrist communicator. Chloe watched, her heart sinking with every passing second. The guard listened, then looked back at them. His expression was unchanged. "Mr. L is aware that you are here. He will see you, but not here, and not now. A room has been prepared. Please follow me." He gestured for another guard to take his place, and then began to lead them away from the glittering party, down a quiet, stark white service corridor, away from the music and the laughter. With every step, Chloe felt like she was walking further into her own personal hell. The party was over. The trial was about to begin. The room they were led to was a small, private office belonging to the museum's curatorial staff. It was stark and functional, furnished with a simple desk, a few chairs, and shelves lined with art history books. It felt like an interrogation room. The guard showed them in and closed the door, leaving them alone in the suffocating silence. Marcus immediately began pacing, his hands clasped behind his back. "All right, Chloe, we need a strategy. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. My God, Elle, he owns everything. The patents alone must be worth billions. We are family. He has to listen to us." Chloe sank into one of the chairs, her glittering dress feeling like a costume for a play that had ended horribly. "Daddy, stop," she whispered. "You don't understand. This isn't an opportunity. This is a judgment." "Don't be so dramatic," he snapped, though his own fear was palpable. "He's still your husband. He's still Liam. We need to apologize. Acknowledge we underestimated him. He'll be magnanimous. Men with that kind of power can afford to be." Before Chloe could respond, the door opened. Liam entered, alone. He closed the door softly behind him. The sound of the latch clicking into place seemed to echo in the small room. He was no longer wearing the severe jacket of his suit and had unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. The change was subtle, but it made him seem less like a corporate icon and more like a man. It was, somehow, more intimidating. He didn't speak. He simply stood by the door, his hands in his pockets, and looked at them. His gaze was not angry. It was not triumphant. It was calm, analytical, and utterly devoid of the affection and patience she had taken for granted for 5 years. He was looking at them like a scientist observing a specimen. The silence stretched, growing heavier with each passing second. It was Marcus who finally broke it, his voice attempting a jovial, fatherly tone that felt painfully flat. "Liam, son, my God, what a night! We are just speechless, so incredibly proud. You kept all this a secret? You sly dog." He laughed, a short, barking sound with no humor in it. Liam's expression did not change. He turned his gaze to Chloe. "Are you proud, Chloe?" he asked, his voice quiet, yet it cut through the room like a razor. Chloe flinched. She couldn't meet his eyes. She stared at a point on the floor. "Liam, I don't know what to say. I'm in shock." "Are you?" he asked, taking a step into the room. "Are you shocked that I am successful? Or are you just shocked that you didn't notice?" We had no idea," Marcus jumped in, trying to shield his daughter. You were so humble. You never said a word. That's right, Liam said, his voice still level, but with an edge of cold steel. I didn't. I wanted to build a life, a marriage, based on something other than a balance sheet. I believed that a person's character was what mattered. Their kindness, their integrity, their loyalty. I was naive. He took another step, stopping in front of the desk. He leaned back against it, crossing his arms. It was a casual posture, but it radiated power. This was his space. They were the intruders. Let's not pretend this is a happy reunion, he said. Let's be honest for once. For 5 years, you have treated me with a thinly veiled contempt. You, Chloe, because I was not a status symbol you could wear. And you, Marcus, because I was not a financial asset you could leverage. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. This was it, the list of grievances. I remember the first time you called my work a cute little hobby, Chloe. It was at our first anniversary dinner. I remember you telling your friends that I was sweet but lacked ambition. I remember every sigh, every dismissive wave of your hand, every time you looked at me with disappointment because my car wasn't a Porsche or my watch wasn't a Rolex. He turned his gaze to Marcus. And you, Marcus, I remember you pulling me aside at a family barbecue to give me a lecture on the importance of aggressive career scaling. You offered to make some calls to get me a real job in corporate finance, a real job in your company, which, by the way, I have owned for the last 6 months. The color drained from Marcus's face. He staggered back a step, looking as if he'd been physically struck. What? You own Sterling? That's not possible. The debt was bought by an anonymous fund. His voice trailed off as the horrifying realization dawned. Liam gave a cold, humorless smile. Nexus Capital is one of my holding companies. I bought your debt to keep you from going bankrupt after your disastrous bet on the fossil fuel sector. I propped you up. I saved you. And you stood in my house 2 nights ago and told me I didn't understand financial practicality because of the suit I chose to wear. He pushed off the desk and began to walk slowly toward Chloe, who was still frozen in her chair. And that brings us to the suit, he said, his voice dropping even lower. Arturo's suit. A beautiful, handmade piece of craftsmanship. A suit that represented substance over style. A suit that was, as you so eloquently put it, a uniform for the anonymous. You hated it because it wasn't a brand, because it didn't scream, I am rich. He stopped directly in front of her, forcing her to look up at him. You didn't just dislike it, Chloe. You couldn't tolerate its existence. You couldn't stand that I would choose something for myself based on my own values. Your contempt for me was so absolute, your need to control and diminish me so profound that you took a pair of kitchen scissors and you destroyed it. He crouched down so their faces were level. She could see the deep, cold clarity in his eyes. The warmth she had known was completely gone. That act, he said, his voice a near whisper, was not about the suit. It was about me. It was the ultimate expression of your disdain. You weren't just cutting up fabric. You were trying to cut me down to a size you could manage. And in doing so, you finally showed me the truth. The truth I had refused to see for 5 years. He stood up, turning his back on her to face Marcus again. Marcus was pale and trembling, leaning against a bookshelf for support. So, let's talk about consequences, Liam said, his voice now crisp and businesslike. Because that's a language you both understand. Marcus, as of this moment, Nexus Capital is calling in its debt. All of it. Your firm is insolvent. You will declare bankruptcy on Monday morning. Your line of credit, which I was personally guaranteeing, is terminated. You are ruined. Marcus made a choking sound, sliding down the bookshelf to sit heavily on the floor. Liam then turned back to Chloe. She was crying now, silent tears tracking through her expensive makeup. And as for us, Chloe, he said, the words delivered with surgical precision, There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time. I just refuse to admit it. This marriage is over. My lawyers will be in touch with you tomorrow. The prenuptial agreement you insisted on is very clear. You leave with what you brought in. This house, the cars, the lifestyle, they are all mine. You will be provided with a temporary apartment and a modest severance to help you transition. After that, you are on your own. No, Chloe finally found her voice, a broken, pleading whisper. Liam, please, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I was a fool, please don't do this. You're not sorry you did it, Chloe, he said, his voice softening with a trace of pity, but not of forgiveness. You're just sorry you were wrong about who you did it to. There's a difference. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. You wanted me to be a man who belonged in your world, Chloe, he said, looking over his shoulder at the ruins of her family. The irony is, I owned that world all along. You just never bothered to look at the man standing next to you. He opened the door and walked out, closing it gently behind him. He did not slam it. He did not need to. The quiet click was the most final sound Chloe had ever heard. She was left in the silent room with her weeping, broken father, the echoes of his words, and the crushing, absolute weight of the new reality he had just built for her. The immediate aftermath was a blur of quiet, efficient destruction. As Liam stepped back into the gala, he was met by Evelyn, who handed him a tablet. On the screen was a series of confirmations. Sterling Investments' credit lines are frozen, she said quietly. The board has been convened for an emergency session Monday at 8 a.m. to oversee the dissolution. We've already had offers for their client list. See that their employees are taken care of, Liam said, his voice flat. Offer generous severance packages and placement assistance through our HR division. They didn't do anything wrong. Of course, Elle, Evelyn replied, already typing a new set of commands. He moved back into the throng of the party, a man who had just dismantled 2 lives, yet his expression was as placid as ever. People swarmed him, eager for a moment of his time. He navigated the conversations with effortless grace, discussing complex financial models and technological ethics, his mind a universe away from the small, sterile room he had just left. He was Elle, and Elle had work to do. Back in the office, Chloe and Marcus sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. The sounds of the party outside, the music, the laughter, were a form of torture, a reminder of the world they had just been violently ejected from. Marcus was the first to stir. He was a man of action, and even in ruin, his instincts were to try and salvage something. He can't do this, he mumbled, pushing himself to his feet. There are laws, contracts. He can't just evaporate my company. Daddy, you heard him, Chloe said, her voice hollow. He owns it. He owns everything. We were living in his world, playing by his rules, and we didn't even know it. This is your fault, Marcus suddenly roared, turning on her, his face contorted with fear and rage. You and your petty, stupid games. You had to push him. You had to cut up his suit. You had a winning lottery ticket in your hand for 5 years, and you threw it in the garbage. My fault? Chloe shrieked back, her own shock giving way to a defensive fury. You're the one who taught me to be this way. You're the one who told me he was beneath us. You're the one who said he was a simple man and a dead weight. You encouraged me. Their argument was ugly and desperate, the sound of 2 people trapped in a sinking ship, fighting over who was to blame for the iceberg. They were interrupted by the security guard, who opened the door without knocking. It's time for you to leave, he said, his tone no longer polite. It was an order. The walk of shame from the office, down the service corridor, and out a side exit into the rainy parking garage was the most humiliating experience of Chloe's life. There was no Mercedes waiting for them. Marcus's driver, upon hearing that his employer's credit was frozen, had simply left. They were forced to call a taxi, standing under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the garage. Chloe in her ruined couture and Marcus in his suddenly ill-fitting tuxedo. The days that followed were a cascade of consequences. On Monday morning, the financial news outlets exploded with the story of Sterling Investments' sudden, catastrophic collapse. It was a minor story in the grand scheme of things, but for Marcus's world, it was an extinction-level event. His phone rang incessantly with calls from panicked clients, angry partners, and journalists. He answered none of them. He sat in his darkened study, a broken man. For Chloe, the humiliation was more personal. The prenuptial agreement was, as Liam had said, ironclad. A team of discreet, ruthlessly efficient lawyers from Liam's family office oversaw the transition. She was given 48 hours to vacate the house. Movers, paid for by Liam, arrived to pack her personal belongings. She walked through the cold, minimalist rooms that had been her domain, now feeling like a ghost. She saw the indentation on the pillow next to hers, the books on his nightstand, the quiet office where he had secretly run the world. It was all a testament to a life she had been adjacent to, but had never truly seen. Her friends, the ones who had giggled at her story about the suit, now avoided her calls. The story of what had happened at the gala had spread like a virus through their social circle, but it had been twisted in the telling. The narrative was not that Liam had been a secret billionaire. The narrative was that Chloe had been married to the legendary Elle and had been so foolish, so appallingly arrogant, that she had driven him away with her petty cruelty. She was no longer an object of envy. She was a cautionary tale, a punchline. She moved into the small, clean, but utterly anonymous apartment that Liam's lawyers had arranged. It was in a respectable neighborhood, but to Chloe, it felt like a hovel. The silence was the worst part. There were no staff, no gardeners, no gala invitations arriving by courier. There was just Chloe and the four walls of her new, diminished reality. A week after the gala, a package arrived for her. It was a simple cardboard box. Inside, she found two things. One was a check for the amount stipulated in her prenup, enough to live on for a year or two if she was careful. The other was a suit. It was Arturo's suit, the one she had destroyed. It had been painstakingly, flawlessly repaired. Every seam was perfect, every cut invisibly mended. It looked brand new. Attached to the lapel was a simple note, written in Liam's familiar, neat hand. Arturo is a master of his craft, the note read. He believes that anything of true quality can be repaired, no matter how badly it has been damaged. I hope for your sake that he is right. Chloe sank to the floor, clutching the soft wool of the jacket, and for the first time, she wept. Not for the loss of the money, or the status, or the house. She wept for the loss of the man. The kind, patient, brilliant man who had tried to love her, and whom she had failed so completely. The suit was not an insult, it was a final lesson, and a sliver of hope. The months that followed were a slow, painful crawl toward a new kind of existence. The world moved on. Nexus AI, with Elle now a public, albeit still intensely private figure, soared to new heights. The Oracle project was a resounding success, and Liam, or Elle as the world now knew him, was hailed as the defining visionary of his generation. He gave occasional interviews, always deflecting questions about his personal life, always focusing on the work and its potential to benefit humanity. He was the benevolent king, ruling from his glass tower. For Marcus, there was no recovery. His reputation was shattered. At 65, he was too old and too disgraced to start again. He sold his large family home and moved into a small condo, living off his dwindling savings, a bitter and defeated man, forever haunted by the ghost of the son-in-law he had so catastrophically misjudged. He and Chloe rarely spoke. There was too much blame, too much shame between them. Chloe's journey was different. The first few months were a haze of anger and self-pity. She tried to reconnect with her old life, but the doors were closed to her. She was a pariah. The severance money began to dwindle. For the first time in her life, she was faced with a terrifying prospect. She had to get a job. Her first attempts were humiliating. She had no skills, no experience. Her resume consisted of socialite and wife. She was rejected from jobs as a gallery assistant, a boutique manager, an event planner. Finally, out of desperation, she took a job at a high-end department store, working in the personal shopping department. It was a bitter irony. She, who had once looked down on those who served, was now one of them. She spent her days helping wealthy, demanding women who were just like she used to be, pick out clothes. She saw her old self in their casual cruelty, their obsession with labels, their dismissal of anything that wasn't the latest trend. And for the first time, she felt a sense of shame that was not about her own fall from grace, but about the person she had been. One afternoon, a woman came in for an appointment. She was elegant, sharp, and exuded an air of no-nonsense competence. Chloe recognized her instantly. It was Evelyn Reed, Liam's COO. Chloe's heart froze. She expected to be fired on the spot, but Evelyn gave no sign of recognition. She treated Chloe like any other store employee. "I need a suit," Evelyn said, her tone crisp, "for a conference, something practical, powerful, but understated. Quality is more important than the label." Chloe's hand trembled slightly as she pulled out options. She found herself steering Evelyn away from the flashy, designer brands and toward a small, lesser-known label that focused on exceptional tailoring and fabric. It was a suit that Arturo would have approved of, a suit that Liam would have liked. Evelyn inspected it, her expert eye missing nothing. "This is excellent," she said, nodding. "A good choice." As Chloe was ringing up the purchase, Evelyn finally looked at her, her gaze direct and penetrating. "He knows you're working here," she said quietly. Chloe looked up, startled. "He does?" "He knows everything," Evelyn said. "It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact. He told me to give you this." She slid a business card across the counter. It was for a non-profit organization that Nexus AI funded, one that specialized in job training and placement for people re-entering the workforce. They have an opening for a program coordinator. It's not glamorous, but it's real work. It's a chance to build something of your own. Evelyn took her bag and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "He also told me to tell you that he hopes you're well." And then she was gone. Chloe stood there, staring at the business card. It was not a handout. It was not an easy path back to her old life. It was an opportunity, a difficult one, to build a new life, a life based on substance, not surface. It was a chance at redemption, offered without fanfare, without expectation. It was a gesture of grace from a man she had given none. That night, she went home to her small apartment. She took out Arturo's repaired suit and hung it where she could see it. She looked at the business card in her hand. For the first time in a very long time, she felt a flicker not of shame or anger or loss, but of hope. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time, it was her own. She was no longer just Chloe, the wife of Elle. She was just Chloe. And she was, finally, ready to find out who that was. True worth is not measured in dollars or followers or the brand of a suit. It's measured in character, in integrity, and in the quiet strength to be who you are, regardless of whether the world is watching. Liam knew his own worth, even when the person closest to him could not see it. Chloe's journey to discover her own was just beginning. It reminds us that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. What do you think? Is redemption possible for someone like Chloe? And what is the most important quality you look for in a person? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective makes these stories so much richer. And if you found this story meaningful, please give it a like and subscribe for more tales that explore the heart of what it means to be human. Thank you for watching.